right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss. I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for this question and answer based podcast. If you have a question that you would like to hear discussed or rambled about, send it in, and I would love to hear it. So the whole point of this podcast is to hear your voice, platform your voice, and to hear what you're going through, and to offer some, and for me then to offer some advice or some thoughts or some guidance or some suggestions or some encouragement for your progress. So if you have a question for a future episode, go over to fearcastpodcast.com. You can send a question over there. You can go over at Instagram at fearcastpodcast. You can send me a question over there. And today, like you could do if you would like, listener, you could be like Frank. And Frank sent me an audio question over at Fearcast Podcast at Instagram, and he recorded his voice. That's why it is going to the tippity top of the list, as would your question if you sent in an audio question through Instagram or through the website or however you want to do it. You can send it into questions at fearcastpodcast.com. Pick your poison. You choose. Either way, we got an audio question today, and I love audio questions. And today is a really good question. I think it's a really complicated question, I'm when you get we'll get into this soon. Frank's question, but either way, so if you have questions, send them in, and I will be sure to get that question up as soon as possible. So I really have nothing at the front end over this. I'm feeling a little snorky. I'm feeling a little congested. I've got my lymph node thingies going today, so I might be getting sick. I'm clearly fighting something. I don't know. This kind of happens. Everyone is coughing in my life right now, so we all have the same disease, I think. But hopefully, I'm just again, we're in pumpkin spice latte distance. I think it's already out now, so it's coming for us. You could go for one. It's getting there, guys. It's going to get cool. It's going to get lovely. Except for you Southern Hemisphere folks. You have summer to look forward to. Sorry, you're coming out of pumpkin spice latte time. This is coming from a Northern Hemispherian and an American, so obviously it all revolves around us. So there's that. Anyways, here's let's jump into the question. Here is the question from Frank.
Hi, Kevin. I just want to thank you for everything that you've done for people that have OCD and being able to allow this platform for people to submit questions and for you to answer them in a very respectful manner. I am a cis-gay man, but I'm someone that struggles a lot with gender identity OCD, and the main fear that I have is that I worry about whether or not I'm a trans woman. I have no problems with the trans community, but I worry a lot whether or not how that can, if I am one, how can that affect me? I have already done ERP therapy, and in many ways it's helped me reduce my anxiety towards what feels like a pressing question. But my question is can exposure and response prevention therapy help someone that is actually in denial? I have had other OCD subtypes in the past, but I worry a lot with this one, and the specific worry that I have is that, is this OCD or is this denial? Which I know it's not something novel for anyone that has OCD. So I guess I asked this question because I worry a lot about the alternative to the narrative that I have OCD. I worry a lot about being in denial, and that maybe I'm subjecting myself to a form of therapy that is only pushing me deeper into denial. I'm doing ERP, and in many ways it's helped me not engage with some of these thoughts. But sometimes the thought keeps coming back as to whether or not do I have OCD or is this denial? And is what I'm doing, could it help for both situations? Thank you so much for having this platform and to submit listener questions. Have a good day. As a small aside, I'm fully aware that the OCD or denial question is a really compulsive one, and I am fully aware also that this is the kind of stuff that hinders ERP?
All right, Frank, thank you so much for this question. This is again, a really good question. I'm sure this question is going to be very activating for some people listening. And I feel, I really appreciate you sending this in. I feel honored that you sent this in. Now I'll make a joke and I'll just say I'm really glad that you sent this in because, you know, for a question like this pertaining to the LGBTQIA LMNOPQR, anyways, plus community. You know, I as a cisgendered, straight, middle-class American Christian male, I feel like I could answer this. And you know what? Probably every other question that comes my way. So if you out there have a question related to diversity, send them in. I'll be sure to give you my opinion on it because we need to hear more opinions from people of my demographic. Now, I'll say that as a sarcastic way to accept the humility in knowing that I'm probably going to answer this slightly incorrectly. And there may be times in this that someone might be listening who may be in these various communities. I may misspeak. I may say something wrong. I would just ask for your grace and understanding and send it in. If I say something wrong, let me know. So you can just email me. You can send hate mail. That's also fine. I've gotten that too. So either way, I guess I'm going into this a little nervous for that. You know what it is? I was like, oh, am I going to say something that's going to get me canceled? I don't think so. But that's like that little voice in the back of my head. It's like, hey, don't mess this up. You're going to say something wrong. I don't know. So we're gonna jump into this. So I'm going to answer this as best I possibly can from an ERP therapist perspective, and that's ultimately the best that I can. And again, Frank, I appreciate your kind words at the front end of that. I here as well will try to answer this in the most respectful and thoughtful way that I can. So let's just jump into that. So I love the acknowledgement about, is this OCD or is the denial? Like, is that question, ultimately is a mainstay of the OCD world. Is this genuine? Is this OCD or am I actually a pedophile? Is this OCD or am I actually just violent? Is this OCD or am I rejecting God? OCD or I don't really love my girlfriend? OCD or am I a ham sandwich? It's like, it's that question, and that question can get people stuck. And I'll talk about this in a bit, but I'm going to preamble it here. That rumination pattern, I'm willing to bet, is the thing that's getting you sucked into this cycle, or is the cycle that you are being sucked into. It's a problem. Catch it. Pull yourself out of it. We can accept the uncertainty of it. You can accept and lean into the identity that you are choosing and that feels most accurate. Now, I'm not going to say the right one because, and we'll talk about uncertainty as well, but this question is extremely common. You recognize it, you see it, you know it. Oftentimes in the work that I've done, there can be the fear that is often associated with with a lot of this question, but particularly with kind of more sexual identity, gender identity. These can be, am I me? Do I really know me? Can I really know myself? And what if everything I know about me changes? Now, I get the sense that the last part of this may be the most pressing, right? That what if everything about me changes? You kind of talked about if this, where was it? If it, how would this affect me, right? So first and foremost, I would encourage you, if you haven't done this already, go back and listen to episode 183 with Chris Tronston on sexual orientation denial. So Chris Tronston is a fantastic clinician, fantastic person, and he's the what is his title? Lead advocate for the IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation. If you've seen anything from the IOCDF, chances are it's Chris Tronston or 5 other people. But point is, one of them is probably Chris Tronston. He's everywhere. He might be in your car right now. He might be on the treadmill right next to you. He's everywhere, I'm telling you. Point is, go listen to that episode. Why? Because he talks very explicitly, very intentionally about his own journey through sexual orientation to recognize, identify, and ultimately own his own sexual orientation. He kind of talks about this genuine identity and a drawing toward, right? So when someone is often struggling with their sexual orientation, I'll say this, when someone is struggling with sexual orientation OCD, there isn't a draw toward something or someone or some type of person. There is a fear of, there is a question, there is a doubt, there is a terror involved with it. There's a what if involved with it, right? There's this like terrible consequence of it. As if like the choice is fraught with terror and fear. And yes, for a lot of people it can be. And Chris goes into that, where he talks about how for some, the obstacle in the way of accepting their sexual orientation or all these other maybe cultural components or familial components that are the obstacles in the way, but not the genuine pull toward. That's not the problem. It's all these other things, right? So there's nothing in your call that necessarily it made me think, or that necessarily alluded to there being a draw toward being trans or identifying with the trans community. It sounded as if there was, again, this question, this rumination, this worry about what if I am, and oh no, again, how would that affect me? So, but that being said, what your call was, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes? So there could be a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot to unpack there, and going through therapy, going through ERP therapy could be really helpful. I'll get into that in a little bit. So one of the questions you had was the question of denial. And, we could ask the question, well, are you in denial? You're not in my office, so I can't really ask you these questions. Now, denial sometimes is a subconscious response. So for you to go, yes, I am indeed in denial, may not be happening. But, through treatment, through, longer conversations about this, you can kind of look at, is there a reason for you to be intentionally or subconsciously rejecting a trans identity, right? You talked about like how this would affect me, and the question is, this question is oftentimes the reason that people might develop a denial or a rejection of their self, right? There can be there can be a lot of consequences that come from taking on a identity that goes against one's family, their history, their community, and it can produce a ton of problems in someone's life, right? Or it can put someone's, depending on where you're at, it can put your life in danger, depending on where you're at. So there can be a lot of very good reasons why somebody might develop a subconscious or an intentional denial of something. But what that also requires is a genuine recognition of that pull towards, that desire toward, right? So one thing that there are a lot of questions that I would have, but again, to get to this answer, so you're getting this question, you're getting this intrusive thought, well, what if this is true about you? What if this thing that it sounds like doesn't really fit who you are, what you want to be, where you want to go in life? What if this thing that's different is actually true of you? Now, we can call that an intrusive thought, and from an OCD perspective, we might categorize that as this intrusive thought, this obsessive doubt. You've thought about it, you've questioned it, you've addressed it, you've run the simulations, you've gone through the you've used your imagination to try to figure out a lot of different outcomes, and I wonder what you've concluded with. Have you concluded with, yes, this does feel genuinely like me? Have you concluded with, this this feels right. I enjoy this. This feels desirable. I feel more at home emotionally, personally, physically. Or have you not? Now, again, I know that I'm asking a lot of questions that may be compulsive, that may be pulling a lot of people into their own compulsions, their own ruminations. But what I'll go towards in this is to say, well, what have you concluded with? You've heard me talk about before, trust your compulsive conclusion. And what we're getting at here, what I'm getting at here when I talk about this, is ultimately trusting yourself and trusting that you, generally speaking, you know you. You've been you a long time, Frank. Your conclusion, oftentimes when people get into these ruminative doubts, or what draws them into this compulsive rumination, is when that question, that obsessive doubt pops in, it doesn't strike them accurately. It doesn't strike them like they don't, like the thought doesn't come in and they go, oh, that is me, nailed it. And then they move on with their life in that new direction. They get this thought and they go, oh, that doesn't seem right. Well, I mean, then I get this, anxiety about this. Well, I gotta figure this out, apparently. So let me think about it. Let me compare. Let me look at that person. Let me think about this. Let me think about my past relationships. Let me imagine myself with someone like this. Let me imagine myself as someone like this, right? And you go through this whole process to either confirm what that doubt is saying or to disconfirm it and thereby confirming what you believe to be true about yourself. Now, Frank, for you, I wonder what you've concluded with. Have you gone through and went, yep, I am trans? Or have you concluded with, no, that's still not me. I am who I am, right? You acknowledge yourself at the top of the call. I am a cisgendered gay man. Okay. If that's your conclusion, and that's where you've gone over and over and over again, one of the things that you can do from an ACT perspective is to ultimately say, maybe that's just who I am. Maybe that's who I'm, who I am in my own wiring, and I can recognize that. I can own that. Now, Chris Tronson in his talk, in episode 183, went at length about this, and he does have the perspective. And again, we'll address this just briefly, and we addressed this in the talk. There is some talk that there are some things that you can know. A lot of OCD treatment is going to talk a lot about, accepting uncertainty, hard acceptance of uncertainty, and saying maybe I'll just never know. And, for some that can be very off-putting to say, I will never know my sexuality. And for some people, they've said, no, that you can know your sexuality. Now, that's a sticky wicket for me. I'm really going to be honest as a clinician hearing these two ideas, because on the one hand, I think we can be pretty confident about our sexuality, our sexual orientation. But then to say you can know it for certain, when you hear a lot of stories from people where they'll say, through introspection and through therapy, I recognized, or I discovered, or I learned that I am, and then fill in the blank. I am bisexual. I am gay. Now, to that person, the argument might be, well, maybe you were, to your point, Frank, maybe you were just in denial. Maybe you were hiding it. You were faking it. You were pretending for all these other secondary reasons. You know what? And maybe for some people that is true. But ostensibly, that person prior to that might also say, I know that I am blank. I know that I'm straight. I know that I'm not bisexual. I know that I'm not gay. And yet through therapy or through talk or through life circumstances, they've come to a different conclusion. So what do we do with that? It's confusing, and I recognize that. And I know that leans into this sense of uncertainty. Now, what I'm advising and what I try to instill, and hopefully I'm doing this well here, I don't know, is a sense of confidence and trusting yourself, right? Trusting yourself and living as if, and moving forward as if. Living in your conclusion, living in what you trust to be true about yourself until something drastically changes. And in the process, resisting this constant rumination, resisting compulsively checking, resisting asking for reassurance or seeking self-reassurance through evaluation or blah, 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 all that stuff, right? And say, maybe I'm going to be wrong. Maybe I will. But I'm going to live my life in the way that I have concluded and trust that I'm right. And when that thought shows up that says, yeah, but maybe you're not. Maybe I'm not. And yet I'm going to keep doing this. Okay. So you also said, and I'll try to make this part brief. Can ERP help someone in denial? So I'm going to say confidently, yes, it can, but it requires a sensitive therapist. Okay. So in my talk, or in one of my early podcasts that I did it on when we were calling it HOCD. This is back in the day, like 5 years ago. Point is in that talk, which I am certain does not hold up from a social component or social aspect. I said the phrase like gay stuff, like a lot, more than I care to remember. Hopefully, I think it was to like lighten the mood or make it not seem so scary. And I hope it didn't come off as offensive. It probably did to some people, but I haven't gotten emails about that one. Not any hate emails about other ones. Yes. Point is, in that, I said, for someone who, let's say, is going into ERP treatment for their sexual orientation, and let's say they are indeed deep down, honestly, truly gay, ERP is going to help. Here's what it's going to do. It's going to non-judgmentally allow someone to consider their thoughts, consider their feelings, and to intentionally put their mind in that place and to get comfortable with this idea. Now, maybe they are, so if they are in denial of their sexual orientation, what that process can do is to help them feel more comfortable with that thought, with that feeling that's there, so that at the end of treatment, they can make an honest decision about whether or not that is who they feel that they are, or if they go, nah, that's actually through the process, no, that's not me. Right? But it can help someone to be able, because let's say, all right, I'll put it more bluntly. Let's say they are gay, but they're terrified of the idea. Well, it's a lot easier to accept your gay identity if you're not constantly afraid of that thought. In steps ERP, right? So again, ERP, what it's going to help them do is it's going to help someone to face their fears, challenge distorted thoughts, tolerate unwanted thoughts and the anxiety that comes with it, right? I think there's a misunderstanding about of what OCD therapy is for sexual orientation. So I want to say that we don't confirm someone's sexual or sexuality or their sexual identity, and I'll say even their gender identity. We're not here to say, no, I know this is true about you, so we're gonna go with that. But what we are gonna do is we're gonna say we will address shame. We will address genuine feelings. We're going to address messaging around sexual orientation, including the culture, the family of origin, one's religion, anything that could be contributing. We're going to talk about the fear of coming out and the consequences of coming out, and one's relationship history, and the thoughts of all this stuff, right? But we're not going to start with the assumption that someone pursuing ERP must be the opposite of what they fear simply because they're in ERP therapy, right? So if someone comes in and says, well, I'm starting ERP therapy, I'm afraid that I'm gay, we can't just automatically assume that, you must be straight. What we're often going to do is we're going to trust what they say. Okay. You're saying you're straight. Great, let's go with that. And let's have these thoughts. Let's have these feelings. Let's do these exposures. And sit with that feeling. Sit with the anxiety that comes with it. And we're going to see what shakes out at the end. And until then, we can hold this we can hold it lightly. And again, see where it shakes out. Not going into it confirming and affirming one's desired sexual orientation, what that's called is reassurance. What that's called is compulsion, right? We're not trying to do that. But we are going to, in a values-based way, pursue your life as you've desired it. And to that thought that says, no, you are this other thing. Maybe I am. And I'm going to go do this over here. So, Frank, I hope this wasn't too confusing. I hope it wasn't too all over the place. But those are my thoughts. So I would encourage you to, if you're still wanting to, go pursue ERP therapy. Now, to anybody out there who would like to offer feedback to Frank, or would like to offer feedback to me, or would want to give Frank some other ideas, send them my way. Go over to fearcastpodcast.com and send me a message over there. Go over to Instagram and send me a direct message, or put a message on this episode page, and I'll address it. If I get some feedback from anybody out there where I misspoke, or I said something wrong, or there's something else that you would like to add, send it my way, and I'll put that up there, because I want this to be a place where I know that I don't know everything. I can't read everybody's mind, and it's hard to answer the question, a 2.5-minute question completely. I know I'm going to miss stuff. And if there's stuff that I missed, help me out there. So, Frank, thank you again for this question. Thank you again for trusting me with this question, and best of luck in your process. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously.